The story so far, one of the best pop punk bands around in the world, released their first new album since 2018 in the last week, and it is I Want to Disappear. What's your thoughts, Tim?
This album is absolutely phenomenal, and it just perfectly encapsulates how good the story so far are as a pop punk band. I don't think there's many bands that have managed to have the longevity that they have, sticking entirely within the genre of pop punk. And this album, whoo, we've waited 6 years for it, but god damn, it was worth the wait.
It definitely was. And I think for me, as a pop punk fan, it's very rare that a band releases an album where I can listen to the full thing. Mm-hmm. And this is certainly that. It's got fast-paced songs. It's got some chill acoustic pop punk vibes, which I love. It's just got everything in there. I don't know. I was a bit worried, I was slightly thinking, it's been a long time. Yeah. The singles were good that came out, and I thought, is the album going to live up? Because I love every project by this band, and I'm not going to glaze them too much. There's one or two songs on this that I'm not a huge fan of, but overall, I can just play the whole thing and be relatively happy.
Yeah, when the singles came out, I was a very big fan of those, and all that I was thinking in my mind was probably the same as you, which is these singles are such big hitters. Are the album tracks going to match these? And my God, they fucking do. Do they deliver? On first appearances of this album, though, I was a little bit concerned that it was shorter than I would have expected. I would have liked a couple of more songs. That's not like saying that the album's not good how it is. But I think for the wait that we had, I did want a little bit longer. But the runtime itself is 28 minutes with 10 songs in total. And when I looked back through the discography, all of their albums are around half an hour long. So this isn't any shorter or any longer than what we to expect from the story so far. So I think, it is what it is.
Do you know what? I actually disagree with you on that rhetoric. I think just make a short 10-song album, every song you're happy with and 100% want to be part of it. Because a lot of bands, we've seen it, especially with other pop punk bands, Green Day, Blink especially, some of the big hitters. In recent years, they've just padded their albums out, and a lot of the tracks are just misses.
Mid or complete flops.
Exactly. Yeah. And this opens up with All This Time, which in itself is a big banger. And I think there's a line from this song that kind of sets the vibes for the entire album on what's going on in Parker's mind and like the relationship-y vibes that's going to happen. Nothing standing in my way, I think of you every day. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh shit, I know where this is going to go now. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's what pop punk's about, isn't it?
Yeah, basically. It's clear, The feeling on this album was very somber, albeit very upbeat and very pop punky. The lyrics themselves, the way that Parker writes his lyrics, the way that Parker has still got these earworms locked away, these lyrical the way that he does his vocal tracks. There's not many people out there that can do it how he does it. I think he's got a certain knack for it. And I wonder how many more he's got locked away over the 6 years that he's been missing, because I'm almost certain he's probably got another album's worth in there. And it's just fantastic. It is really good.
Yeah, I want to see them live, because we seen them support Blink-182 last year, which should have got them a lot of exposure. Mm-hmm. And I hope that they carry on that path. But I want to see the story so far. Their live shows when they're in like a little sweaty venue, always look top tier.
Yes,
and I think they're a band that have got a pretty special connection with the fan base. And obviously I think it's the themes throughout the albums of heartbreak and struggling with mental health, etc., and just struggling with life that mean, myself included, and everyone gets that kind of deep connection with the band. And I think that's one of my favorite things about this album. It's touching on topics that are real and they mean a lot. It doesn't feel like bullshit. It doesn't feel like just added lyrics and added emotion for no reason. It feels real and it feels raw.
There's amazing instrumentals throughout it, but the lyrics themselves feel very personal. It almost feels like it's like a private thing that we shouldn't even be able to listen to. Like the lyrics and the emotion that Parker's putting out feels like something he'd put into like a diary or a journal that should never see the light of day. So it really feels like we're peeling back the curtain and looking within his psyche. And it's clear, because this album is predominantly about Parker's dad. And it's clear how much of an impact his dad had on him and the band as a whole, that they've all come together to do this stuff. And it makes you feel heartbroken for him, but at the same time, it gives you a sense of happiness that he's been able to use this album as an outlet and as a way to bring the band back to what they were. I'm not saying they ever fell off, but to come back so strong and to be able to like lay your emotions out in the way that he does, I think it's a hurrah for him, really.
Well, on that note, another lyric from the third track on the album, Letterman, is it ends the song on, I know that you're gone and I can't forget it. Admit that you're gone and just accept it.
Yeah.
Which
really
that is
sad. It's a proper. This album really hit me deep because of personal events and stuff. And listen to it through and through. You listen to the lyrics and you go, "Holy shit, man! This guy's sad." But at the same time, he's celebrating the life. If anything, he's celebrating the relationship that he did once have, and now that's gone. But he's accepting the fact that it's gone and that it won't come back. And I think it's almost like therapy. It genuinely is like therapy.
I think maybe that's why it's so hard. That's why they've not released an album in so long.
Yeah,
because
potentially. Yeah,
he knows that a lot of the way that he probably writes music and always has been about deep personal things. So he knew that he'd have to address those issues coming into this album. And as much as it's made it amazing for us, I'd imagine for him writing these songs has been a real tough process.
Yeah, and how long he's had them in the bag for, and how long he's been thinking about this stuff, and whether he's definitely the kind of person who would have scraps of paper laid around with just 3 words written on it, and you know what I mean, like kind of just bits that he's put together and said, this line will work here, and then again, like I was saying about his earworms, to get these lyrics into a way that is singable and that makes you remember the tracks all the way. He's a bit of a genius. He's a bit of a genius.
Rose done it.
Yeah, he has. I really like the album artwork, personally.
Oh, yeah, it's cool.
I like the art style that they've gone for. But what I really liked was the artwork for the single Big Blind, which is the guy with the beanie, and he's holding cards, and it's just a cool art style. And I think they had this artwork displayed when they were supporting Blink, because I remember the weird,
they did,
like the big hands and all that stuff. I just think it's really cool. I really like it.
I think that a lot of cool vinyl variants as well. I think there was about 10 different variants.
True.
Only some of them had like 250 to 500 pressings, but
It's the right way to do it.
It's nice to see a band putting a lot of effort into that side of things. I think it's really important, and it does kind of add something to the album as a whole as a fan, because if you pick up one of those vinyls and it's actually got cool artwork. Big Blind had a singles vinyl as well.
Yeah.
Obviously that artwork will have been on there. People don't appreciate it, but they'll have had to probably outsource or get someone in there or around the band to do that. And there's clearly been a lot of time and effort put into it. But for me on the album, I think you'll be completely the opposite to this, actually. So it has quite a fast start on a lot of the songs, but then as it comes towards the end, the last maybe 3 songs, or at least definitely the last 2 songs, are much more chill and kind of bring it down before it ends.
Yeah.
And that's my favourite section of the album, funnily enough. And it completely went against that worry that maybe as a whole it won't be as good, because that end period, I thought, just smashed it out the park. Maybe I'm a bit more prone to enjoying some of the more chill pop punk tracks just in general, but I thought they did well with that. And it proved their diversity as a band, their ability to do both styles of pop punk.
Yeah, so I as a whole, I would struggle to pick a single song of this album that was my favorite. Like, I genuinely, I still haven't really got one that is my all-time favorite off the album. And it, from top to bottom, it's no skips. However, I would argue personally, and this is my bias against acoustic pop punk, that the last 2 tracks are my least favorite. But that does not mean that they're bad, because I would also argue that the last 2-3 tracks are the most interesting in terms of how the songs have been written and how they've been delivered. So whilst I don't particularly enjoy that style, I can agree that those tracks are special, and there's something about them that just intrigues me. And whilst they wouldn't be ones that I'd put on singularly, like I wouldn't listen to those if it wasn't in the context of the album, I do think that they stand their ground and have some merit for them.
Yeah, they add something to the album.
Definitely.
But go on, I'm going to give it. So you got 30 seconds to think about it. I think my favourite track on the album is one of those last couple, and it's Keep You Around, which, it's emotional. It feels super personal, as we've mentioned a few times. It's got them chill vibes. The story so far on their earlier albums are quite a heavy style pop punk band, and this is the completely opposite end of the spectrum, but you've got everything in between. So Tim, if you had to pick one song as a favourite song, what would it be?
All This Time. Very closely followed by Big Blind.
Big Blind's the banger.
I fucking love that track. But I think if we're going off album tracks, All This Time was released as a single just shortly before the album dropped. But I reckon that's probably my favourite, and mainly because of the earworms that it has in it. And like you were saying, the Nothing Standing in My Way, I Think of You Every Day, that little bit, and then the bar after it, and he repeats that a couple of times. I think it's just such an earworm, and I think that might end up being the biggest track off this album. So one thing that I wanted to say about this album that is a little bit of a detriment to it. Don't get me wrong, I think it's a fantastic album. I think it's great. It's probably one of the best pop punk albums that we've had in a very long time. But the mix on the album does not do it service. I think that the mixing that's been done isn't quite what I've come to expect from the story so far. Okay. So I expect more of a raw and ready sound. So the vocals to be a bit more raw, the drums to be a little bit more raw. But on this, everything's very equalized, everything's very compressed, and it's all feels almost washed out, like it's all a bit muddled together almost. Okay. Whereas, for example, if you listen to is Big Blind, you listen to the single version of Big Blind versus the album version of Big Blind, and you can hear a stark difference between the drums and the vocals versus the album version. And me personally, I really prefer the single over the album version of that song. And that's literally the only downside that I can find in this album.
That's weird because
the mixing.
I've actually seen someone say online the complete opposite.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen someone say I much prefer the mix on the album version of Big Blind because they notice the difference as well.
Yeah. So
that is weird.
Yeah. So I think personally, for the story so far, I'm more used to that raw sound that they have because the drums usually are very raw and very raucous, and you can hear everything that he's doing. Whereas on the final version of this album, it's very nice. I think nice.
Based on that, though, that must have been a decision from the band.
Oh yeah, I imagine so. Yeah. So yeah, definitely.
It is what it is.
But I mean, as a whole, like I say, that's just me personally. I would have preferred it to be less. I wouldn't say overproduced, just a bit more raw. Yeah. But it's not to its detriment. Like, it's not a problem. I can listen to the album in full. It's not an issue. It's just when I compare Big Blind album versus Big Blind single, I much prefer the single.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Is that all?
That's it.
Oh, shit. Well, to finish things off, let's give the album a ranking out of 10. What would you give it?
Out of 10. What are we ranking it against? Are we ranking it against other stories
just
so far?
As an album.
As a whole?
Just as an album, if you've got to rank it 1 to 10.
8.5.
Oh, do you know what's weird? That was my thought in my head. Like, I'm not kidding. Thought about this about 30 seconds ago.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to go 9.
See, I was thinking 9. But there's a couple of things that have pushed it down from a 9 personally.
Personally, 10-track album, there's probably only one track that I'm not a huge fan of. So 9.
Yeah. So
if I like 9 of the songs.
For me, it's the last 2 or 3 tracks are a bit airy for me, unfortunately, and the mix in itself. So it just brought it down from a 9 to an 8.5. But that does not mean that it isn't one of their best albums. Because I do think, if you look back at this in retrospect, 5 years down the line, maybe they release another album, whatever, I think this will be in their top 3 albums. I genuinely do.
Boys, don't leave it another 6 years, please.
Please don't.
We've been waiting for this.
Oh, fantastic.
Good album. Thanks for watching the video. Thank you very much. Subscribe, everything on YouTube. We'll catch you soon.
Bye-bye.